Hello, men. Good to see you. In Romans chapter 12, verse 2, Paul tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds. Well, that, of course, raises the question of how do we do that? How does this transformation actually work? I would suggest that the key to answering that question is found in the previous verse, where we are told to present our bodies a living sacrifice. What does that mean? We need to come back to this. Well, for a sacrifice back in the days of the temple, in the Old Testament, you needed an animal. Well, we're the animal, and you needed fire, and you needed an altar. And so when we're trying then to worship in spirit and in truth, how does that actually work? And I would suggest that we look at the altar. What is the altar? Or more particularly, who is the altar? Jesus Christ is our chief cornerstone. Jesus Christ is the one that we look to. Jesus Christ is our only mediator and advocate. He is our altar. His death on the cross, his atoning sacrifice for us, then becomes our altar. And I think of John, the Apostle John, when Peter wanted to know whether or who was the betrayer. And it says that John leaned back on Jesus. And that's the picture I have in my mind, that we need to be leaning back on Jesus. That's our altar. He is our altar. It is written that as the chief cornerstone, we are to fall on him. He said, take up your cross daily. So Paul here, in speaking to Christian brothers, this is a message for people who already have a relationship with Jesus Christ. And he's saying, hey, I urge you, be a living sacrifice and therefore be transformed. Go to Jesus. And I wonder about Peter. Here Peter was asking John to find out, and John's leaning back on Jesus. And I wonder if later on, after the resurrection and the ascension, that whether Peter and John were talking about, boy, I sure wish I would have leaned on Jesus a little more. I wish I would have leaned in a little more to Jesus. I just wonder if that kind of conversation went up. And then later, Peter would write in his first letter, let me read it, 1 Peter chapter 5, verses 6 and 7, therefore humble yourself under the mighty hand of God, that he may exalt you in due time. And here's the key, casting all your care upon him, for he cares for you. Are we going to Jesus for transformation? He cares for us. A lot of times the cares of this world interfere with our transformation. That's why in this very verse 2 of chapter 12 of Romans, Paul is saying, don't be conformed to the world. We get caught up in the cares of the world, men, let's face it. And what the Bible's telling us is, hey, come to the altar. Come to the Lord Jesus Christ and his atoning death on the cross and relax on that, lean on that, and be transparent. Jesus tells us in Revelation that he knocks at the door of our heart, and if we just open it to him, he'll come in and have fellowship with us. He wants us to come to him with our cares. He wants us to come to him for the transformation and the renewing of our minds. And lastly, men, I would suggest that there are other altars. People will put their living sacrifice of their lives on other altars, just like we read throughout the Old Testament, where they'd set up these altars in these high places, not at the temple. There's altars all around that are not Jesus. Let's present ourselves, men, to Jesus, not to false, idolatrous altars. And perhaps that's why Jesus, on the night he was betrayed, said, he took bread and he broke it and said, "This is my body who I give for you." Similarly, he took the cup of wine, said, "This is the wine, this is the blood I shed for you." We're to remember these things. And when we lean into that, when we fall back on that, when we fall face plant on that, or we pick up our cross and we're leaning into that, and we're presenting ourselves to this altar, this so very important altar, men, we will be transformed by the renewing of our minds. And so until I see you again, may the Lord richly bless you, my brothers.